It is preparing to live stream right now.
All right.
We're super excited. I think it will actually work this time.
Yay.
People are officially doing the wave.
Yeah, there's a thing on mine that says meeting is now streaming live.
It is preparing to live
There it
stream right
is.
now.
All
We're
right.
super excited. I think it will actually work this time.
Yay.
People are officially doing the wave.
Yeah, there's a thing on
Yeah, well, you know, that's like just your opinion, man.
Welcome. Welcome, everyone. My name's Andrew Broughton. I'm co-hosting here with Brian today on the world famous Audio Opinion Show, where everybody has an opinion. And to that end, we want to make sure that everybody does get their opinion in on the particular topic of the day. So we'd like to start this whole thing off with a couple of polls. And Brian, why don't you fire up the first poll here, and we'll see whether or not we can get some sort of agreement or disagreement on a very important topic.
All right, so the very important poll topic number one, it is the most important question of the day, and it is, oddly enough, it's a Princess Bride question. And it is, how do you pronounce, this is a repeat, so those of you who've been here before should know the answer to this. How do you pronounce the actor that played Wesley's name? Is it Kerr Elvis? Is it Carr E. Elwes? Is it Kerr L. Wes? Is it Carrie L. Wes? Or fifth, is it who? Get your votes in now. Tally your votes in quickly.
Inconceivable.
Votes are coming in from all over, and I think we have a consensus. I'm ending the poll. I'm sharing the results. And I'd like to say that the answer is indeed Kerr Elwes, and I'm still not saying it's super great, but it's close enough. And most of you actually got it right. So I'm thankful for that. So now that we've gotten that out of the way and we know how to do a poll, let's actually figure out what our topic is for the night. Oops, what happened there?
I just did a share and that showed it up. Right.
Oh,
So if I hit share and then I can hit close, or you can hit close.
so I'll hit that. And so I'm going to go to what we're actually going to talk about tonight. And so I picked for tonight, it's a pretty easy night, pretty obvious things. What are we talking about tonight? 4 options. Option number 1, we're going to talk about sampling rates, whether it matters or not. Option 2, plugins versus the real thing. Do we prefer? Do we think it matters? Do we care? Third, sounds of mic pre's, another classic topic. And then fourth, in honor of April Fool's Day, what was the most foolish thing you ever did on a gig? And that'll be story time, but we've got an awful lot of live gig people here. So something tells me that while it might not be opinion related, nevertheless, it will probably be some interesting stories. So votes are coming in. This one's close. Only got 7 votes in so far. I know there's more than
Brian,
70.
it looks like as co-host and you as well, neither of us can vote. Is that correct?
It would appear to be true. Because I can't vote, and sorry I took away your vote. I didn't mean to.
Well, can I? Yes, I can.
You are from Georgia.
Oh, I see what you did there. Oh, voting jokes. Okay,
Oh,
okay,
yes.
that's
He's
the group.
parched.
Brian, there's 2 of us.
Oh, true. Brandon's also from Georgia. All right. Well, I'm ending the poll and. I'm sharing the results, and we have a tie. We have a tie over whether we want to talk about mic pre's for the 47th time, but there's always room for the sound of electronics, or we want to talk about foolish things. I'm looking for something to flip. You know what? I'm not going to flip anything. Robert Jones,
Yeah.
Which of those two would you prefer that we talk about tonight?
Well, as much as I enjoy a good cork sniffing argument, I think the foolish thing you ever did on a gig
it's
Would be more
kind of, it
humorous
is,
topic.
it is kind of hard to beat that, especially given the fact that it's April Fool's Day. So in honor of April Fool's Day, it's going to be foolish things that you've done on a gig, and we can even extend it to foolish things that we've seen other people do on gigs. I think that would be fine. Andy, take it away.
All right. So starting with foolish things. Anybody like to start this off? Or shall I start with my stupid thing that I did?
Come on, Canada.
Here's a stupid thing I didn't get. I remember doing a show where I had a lot of different scenes on my console. And at the start of the show, one of the things that I needed to do was I would have a mute scene. This is for running monitors. I'd have a mute scene while the things were opening and getting ready to start. And there'd be a count in. And then at the top of the count in, I would hit go. And off we go. Everybody's ears would unmute. We'd get right into the show and everything would start happening. Well, this one time, show started. I hit the go button. And the band started playing. But it sounded very, very strange in my ears. All I could hear was like some ambience sort of sound in my ears. I started cueing people's mixes, and their mixes were literally not working. But it wasn't like everything was off. Only some of the microphones were working, some weren't. So I thought, hang on a sec, what's not working? It sounds like the drums are not working. Okay, must be the Subsnake must have given up on me. Run out on stage. Okay, let's reseat that connector. Let's try plugging a couple things in here. Let's and then run back to the board. What like looking. I'm seeing inputs. I'm seeing faders. I'm seeing metering. Still though, everything sounds weird, and the band's staring at me with horrid eyes. People are they pulled an ear out now, and they're continuing to play. They don't want to stop the show. They want to keep it going. And I look and I looked again very carefully at my console, being a Yamaha console, and I see the flashing light beside the as you have the scenes buttons. There's the recall button is flashing, I believe. So it actually got to the point of stepping down the scenes, but not actually hit recall. It just moved down and not actually hit recall. I hit recall. Show started. Band laughed later on about the whole thing, but it was the most horrible feeling for the first few seconds. And because I'd done the show a million times before, that was something I'd never done. I'd never not pushed recall, ever. It had never happened. So as soon as it went wrong, I assumed cable's problem, something else is going on. It's not the most obvious thing, which is I never pressed go. So that's my stupid story.
Well, I was going to have struggle coming up with one, but you reminded me that mine was almost exactly the same. The first time I ever used a PM1D, which was when it was very new, I was very excited about using this really programmable console that I could do pretty much anything with. And I programmed in a bunch of scenes, and I even changed the console layout in scenes and the patching in scenes. And I got into the middle of a show and I lost the lectern mic. And Walter Cronkite is standing up at the lectern trying to speak. And Pete Erskine was actually my A2, and he grabs a handheld wireless from backstage and he's going to give it to Walter Cronkite. And I'm on comms going, "No, Peter, no, that mic's not even in this scene." I don't know how I finally got it resolved, but I was standing next to the producer in the balcony at Roseland, and he was also the lighting designer, Jules Fisher, and he's staring daggers at me. Well, the mic is not working for Walter Cronkite. We finally get it working, and the show goes on, and I get redeemed about 10 minutes later when, in a lighting cue, the light does not come up on the lectern. And Blair Brown is introducing whoever the next celebrity who was going to speak was. And she's standing there in the dark for about 30 seconds. And finally she says, "I liked the lighting better the last time I was up there." and
Amazing.
I got to smile at Jules, but first time on that big console, and I way overthought it and overprogrammed it and really screwed myself. And
Everybody who first, got a console with scenes and then went, oh, I'm going to use all the scenes, and then bit themselves and went, I need to stop using all the scenes. Yeah, it was.
It wasn't even all that I used scenes. It was that I reprogrammed the patching in the scenes, and I reprogrammed the way the fader panels laid out so that, because you could move everything on a PM1D. And
Right.
Oh, heck, guys,
Man,
I did that. I did on a
dug a hole.
PM4KM with only 8 mute groups. I was utilizing all my mute groups, 1 through 8. 8 was all channels mute. And for some, who knows why, during the encore one night, my hand went donk on number 8, and the whole band went.
Who didn't have group 8 or mute group 8 as the hall?
Right.
That's not even that's not my story for tonight, but that, and the whole show, the band being professionals kept playing, but yeah. Only 8 choices, not 99 scenes. I had 8 choices and I blew it.
I always used 8 as the effects mute, but that was just me. Go ahead, Jason. You got your you said you had another story, a better story.
Well,
I like
it's
that
my
story.
turn.
That was a good one.
I'll go with what I think is the funniest one. In 1993, I'm on the road with Mark Chestnut out of Beaumont, Texas. We work a gig in Western Louisiana. Catering is Cajun food all night long. Delicious, spicy. Buses rolling after the gig. We're headed for someplace in Florida across I-10. We stop at a truck stop. The driver leaves the bus. I have no idea where he went. My guts exploded. So I went inside the truck stop to do what I had to do. Took a while. I come out of the truck stop and the bus is gone. So now back then in 1993, all you have is a pager. I don't have a phone. I don't know anyone's phone number. The bus is gone and the truck stop is closing for the night. And 2 very voluminous older women cooks.
Good grief! How delicate are you trying to make this?
Yes.
I think we get it. There was fat old people.
And I'm Yankee boy from Detroit in southern Louisiana at 4:00 in the morning in a truck stop that's closing. And these 2 women are talking about all the things they're going to do to me. And I'm 23 years old and I'm terrified. And they finally, after torturing me for a little while, we're going to take you home. We're going to take good care of you. They call the state troopers to stop, to let them know what's going on. So an hour, and these 2 women stay with me. They stay with me there for about an hour, just giving me hell. And the bus rolls back up with 3 police cars behind it, 3 state troopers. And I get on the bus and the driver waves the cops on and they're laughing and the driver starts reaming me. I lost my license a year ago.
Oof.
I could be going to prison. Do you know how lucky you are that I have autographed pictures of our artist? And
how much longer did you have to spend on a bus with that same guy?
Another year till I quit. Yeah. Because I was young. I needed the gig, But the funniest part, man, I wish I could remember how many different ways they explained what they were going to do to me. They thought this.
Ever take a client home? Just saying.
Yeah. Nice one. Jason.
I've done stupider things, but I just think that's the most entertaining.
Jay, you got a story for us?
Goofy things I've done. There's a lot. I'll do two quick ones. One will be like a shout out to some people. Anybody ever sleep in too long on a tour stop?
Show of hands, everybody.
I've had people save my life just because they
Canada,
poked
there
at
you
me
go.
to say that.
Queen Elizabeth Theater. We started our load-ins every stop at 9:30. I woke up at noon and sound check is at 2. And nobody's on the bus, and I'm freaking out and looking all around, and nobody's there. Nobody woke me up. Everybody just left me there. And I run out of the bus. I run through the loading dock, and I go in, and everything, all the racks, all my Rios, all my snakes, everything was just perfectly set up. I had little laminates and everything with like, if you open it up, like, please set it up like this, right? And shout out to the Canadian dudes there. They were like, "Oh, I thought it was how you wanted it, eh?"
That's exactly
yeah.
the way we talk. Yeah.
Yeah,
All the time.
That's exactly perfect. Thanks, man.
I will say that my crew at the then Cannon Theater could have set up my show for me without me. So
the only other one I'd say is the one that if I'm ever doing like a class or something, I use as an example to own up to your fuck ups. Is I had Condoleezza Rice on stage. It was a political thing. There's a bunch of other people behind her, like wired up. And I realized, like, oh man, like, why am I doing this the hard way? Let me patch in Dugan real quick, right? So I go in, set up my inserts, and I think I had a multi-band. It wasn't in the effects. I had something there that wasn't Dugan, slot 1, rack 1. And I went in there, set my first insert point. And then when I set the second insert point, I set it to something that wasn't in line with that channel and just wiped the channel. And she all of a sudden just went down on stage. And, it took me about 5 seconds to go in there and be like, oh shit, like reset my insert. But at the end of the day, the technical director and the producer, they're like, what happened? Like, did the power go down? Did the console glitch? And I was like, no, man, I fucked up me. And
yeah, that would be me. I would, yeah.
But yeah, because I was honest about it, they were like, oh, whatever. That's always the case point.
I literally had the same thing, Jay, like last year after like 25 years of doing this, like set up and I got stuck with an LS9, and the patching is, as we all know, glorious on an LS9. And all the Dugans were patched perfectly except for one return on one microphone. And, because I had sound checked everything and then was patching something else and accidentally unpatched it. And of course, that was the first microphone. It was like mic 5, but it was the very first one to walk up. So it set the tone. And of course, nothing. And I'm just like,
nothing. You broke the chain. Yeah. Well, you get muscle memory, right? Everybody here probably just click, click, click. You get so used to doing it, right?
That just instant, just before somebody speaks, that you're just anticipating, is it gonna make sound or yeah.
And then when they pause for a minute, you're like,
oh, and yeah, and they come up to the mic and they look like they're talking because you can't see them that well, and they're not.
Is it on? Is it on? Yeah, it's on.
Yeah. Bang, bang. Oh my gosh. Wow.
A facing story, and it'll show how old I am. We were doing the Captain and Tennille in a ballroom for some gala dinner crap, and we didn't do the podium show. The in-house AV did podiums and all that, and so basically, downbeat for the band was the start of the show, and we had spent, after the sound check, before the show, spent a lot of time chasing a buzz in the PA, which again shows how old I am. And there were Brooks 360s crossovers. So every time you cycle the power, they come up and mute. And so we got to the end of the endless fooling around chasing this ground loop. Oh, we nailed that and, walked away for dinner and came back. And so they do the podium show. And then it's like, I'm the Captain and Tennille. And they drag the podium off and they come out. And I am far enough back in the house that I'm behind the delay speaker that's 15 feet in front of me. And so we do the whole first song, and it sounds a little weird, but not too weird. And then somebody says, oh, it's really muddy out front. And I step out past the delay and realize that the crossovers have been muted still since the end of when we had been fooling around with the ground loop. So I started the show off like one whole song, no mains, just subs and delays. And I got to own that later. But it was, like live and learn moment.
Well,
But-
I just like how the response you got was, it's a little muddy up front.
Well, that's because the
And
band
it's-
didn't complain about it. The audience did. They don't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
So
It's the beautiful thing about audiences. They never know what's going on.
yeah, well, and my theory's always been that they remember the last song, not the first song. So, if you're going to bone it early and then recover the rest of the night.
Yeah, always make it look like you'd meant to do whatever it was that's going on. It's part of the show, man.
So that
Glad you liked it.
Self-effacing bone of myself.
I remember doing a gig where I am the assist, and I walk up to the front of house guy, and I'm like, "Hey, he's got a piece of drape over his amp rack, and we're in a long, wide venue with delay speakers like down the length of the venue, and the main speakers closest to us are on. We could definitely hear them, and I'm just like, "Hey, why are there red lights shining through this piece of black drape over the front of the amp rack?" And I go to like reach down to pull the drape off, and he like slaps my hand, and I'm like, all right, whatever, I'm gonna walk away. As the vice president of the association comes running back, screaming like, what's going on? Nobody can hear at the ends. And of course, the processor's all muted, and I'm just like, woof. Luckily for him, downstairs in the main theater, a piece of scenery had just fallen off of a pipe and gone through the sprinkler system and was flooding the stage. So everyone very quickly got out of there, and nobody remembered the muted speakers.
Yeah, show of hands for every time somebody else's department made your screw up look not that bad. Yeah, like mine was.
Video never works.
Mine was. It's a boring story, but it basically the 400 amp feeder backstage that the forklift ran over during the show, causing it to arc and melt, definitely made them forget all about not having any audio for the first 2 minutes of the show. Like nobody remembered that anymore as they were rushing for the not adequate emergency exits in Kiev, Ukraine.
How about a time that Brian probably remembers, and also Pete, when the generator company...
I know this story.
The generator company later informed us that we weren't drawing enough power on the generator, and that's why it seized up and died as the CEO walked on stage. Luckily, our producer grabbed the little tiny megaphone they had backstage and went running out there, handed it to the CEO, and they all kind of played it off.
I actually have never seen the victories snatched from the jaws of defeat better than that moment, because it was literally 3 seconds. Guy is like, we've done the big buildup, and he is walking in the front door, and that's the moment that everything went away. And they just threw a bullhorn at him, and he was like a trooper and just ran around the room with the bullhorn for 10 minutes while we
because you demanded that half a amp more out of the generator, just as it decided, just oh no, sorry, too much carbon or whatever.
Yeah, no, it was like you pushed the subs just that much too far, and now I don't want to go anymore.
You're done.
I had that exact same thing happen at I think it was an Indian performance at a high school, and one of my audio techs had apparently plugged all the power that we needed on stage onto one leg. So about 10-15 minutes into the show, all the power just went out. And my lighting guy ran out to the generator. It was down. We had a backup, but they started pulling out the twist, putting the jumpers to Edison, going into wall power, and yeah, it was a disaster.
Man.
Okay, yeah, generator stories. Sorry, I'm just doing show of hands to save us some half the stories, generator stories.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. Nathan, you got a story for us?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I probably got lots of stories, but long time ago on my first or second gig, I'm sitting with an LS 932, and the whole show's going to go. It's going to start. Music plays, everything comes up. A camera guy who was hired to videotape the guy brought in his own wireless. And so I didn't, unbeknownst to me, he turned on the wireless, which walked on two of my channels, which happened to be the CEO's channels. So I'm popping up, and up he comes, dead silence. And I'm just like, what the, I don't know what's going on. And so he walks over to the podium mic, and I inadvertently pressed mute on the podium mic. So then he couldn't talk at all. And it
No
was
wireless,
just like,
no wired, no nothing.
yeah, it was just a comedy of errors on my part because I kept going ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
And I, finally after about 10 seconds, I realized I'd muted his podium mic. And by that time, we'd ran up a wireless handheld. So you had 3 working mics, but it was it was a little embarrassing. That's about it.
Gosh. Nice one. Peter?
So I'm going to take us back to the analog days, but it's going to start with a truck story first. So, Philly Folk Festival. And it was the kind of deal where like a few chosen few stage leads on that show, on that festival. I think there was like maybe 6 stages or something. So like the lead of each stage had to drive the truck for that stage with the PA and everything in it. Box trucks, Penske non-CDL single axle box trucks. But we all had a little bit for the main stage because the main stage required so much more gear. These trucks were dual fuel tank trucks, all right? And I don't know if anyone's been at the Philly Folk Festival, but the main stage is on a really steep hill. And you load in at the downstage edge, meaning you have to drive on this steep hill and you have to turn around on it. Well, most of the trucks by this time after driving down from Massachusetts were like, had a third of the fuel capacity in them, right? So we're loading in, I'm like truck 3. Okay. Truck 4, maybe. So I'm sitting on this hill on an angle sideways for quite a while. And I mean, I'm not a truck driver. I don't know these things, but all my fuel went from one tank to the other, but the fuel pump is only in the other tank. So when I go to turn it back on, like, nope, no go. And it slowed us up by like 6 hours trying to figure out why this, because like none of us are truck drivers. We're all just sound guys, like with these rental trucks. So I get to my stage late, load in. I have like 5 VDOS and a Soundcraft Delta console. And
I just saw that on a rider yesterday.
Really? I actually missed it. Yeah, but like sun is beating down. This is like the next morning probably, and I didn't get like my setup day at my stage or something. Next morning you got the morning, and then like first bands are in the afternoon, and I'm like struggling to get up and running. And I have like a double wide process rack and nothing is working. Like I can't get, and this is like early days of digital too. So I have like a multi-track computer running something, I forget at the time, maybe like SoundForge maybe or something like that. And I'm trying to like listen to songs and like nothing's working. It's sunny. And I mean, I go through like 2 hours of trying to get the PA to work. And finally, like the sun moves to a point where the little pop-up tent, it's like I'm shaded now. And I realized that the console was off the entire time. Because like the lights on that console are not that bright. Like you can barely see them in the dark, let alone like when the sun is shining on it. And all my EQs were DN360s, which pass audio when they're off, so yeah, it was just a very embarrassing weekend.
That's actually kind of, although I never did it anywhere close to that like length of time, but I do remember once or twice in the bright sun with Leah, like the little Soundcrafts, because all they had was like teeny tiny little LEDs that you couldn't see,
right.
And they didn't have like VU meters that moved, so there was like no, like 2 or 3 times where I was like, trying to get sound to come out, but I figured it out faster than that. That's classic.
I've got a sunshine screw up if you want to hear it.
Why not?
In 96 or 97, Robert Bull, famous monitor engineer, one of the best around.
Love that guy.
Good guy. Bob Bull. He's the man. He had done Fanfare in Nashville, which is now CMA Music Festival, for years for Clare Brothers. His father or grandfather passed away in 96 or 97 at the last minute. And Ralph Mastrangelo called me up and said, Jason, I need you to fill in for Bob. So I went and I did it. And on the first day of Fanfare, Fanfare is a big deal in Nashville. Day one, lot of big acts right from the start, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm the monitor engineer and the supposed RF expert. And we start off and everybody's great at sound checks and everybody's great when they're hanging around the console. But as soon as they go to start their sets, their ear monitors keep dropping out and everybody's freaking out. And this goes on till lunchtime. And I'm pulling my hair out. I had hair back then. I'm like, what is going on? And I even, I get on the intercom with the producer of the show and I'm like, what are the chances that we can get everybody to go wedges for the rest of the day? And he's like, no, that's not going to happen. You better make it work. And one of our crew brings me lunch. I stay there and I'm trying to figure it out. And finally, the sun has shifted to where it's finally has shaded my Clare in-ear monitor combiner, which was brand new technology back then. And even though I hit the button at 9 o'clock in the morning and everything sounded great in monitor world because I'm standing right next to everything, the blue light didn't come on. And I didn't know it until that shadow. And I hit the button and the rest of the festival was great. But I never got called back.
Man,
because of the sun.
Yeah.
I've had a combiner be off too. And you're thinking, well, you get a little bit of interference, but because things do work, when you're close by, somebody moves across the stage and hey, it's not working anymore. And you don't notice that little one single LED sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah, I've seen that one before.
How about being a little gun shy because you've done a previous gig with a brand new, at the time, version 1, like one of the first off the bat Free Speak 2 base stations that in the middle of the show.
Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on that.
And so the set after ClearCom sends you a brand new Free Speak 2 bass and swears it's all good and they've tested everything. Robert may have heard this story already. You get to site and you start, like, middle of the show, the same symptoms start happening and you start panicking because all of the call lights on the wired intercom are going, all these belt packs are vibrating and nobody can figure out what's going on. And you're, as the comm operator, just sweating bullets that your base station is dying for a second gig in a row for the same client. And it turns out that, in fact, actually the producer is sitting there just hitting the call buttons on his pack, thinking nothing of it, and causing every comm station on stage to be vibrating and calling.
And can the original Free Speak 2 just be retired now, please, forever? I hate
there's a company still making Tempest right now.
Tempest needs to get thrown in the garbage. Free Speak 2, I hate that I can't change matrix and panel mode on my 4-wire pins. Throw it away. We have newer stuff. It's fine. Okay.
Oh my God.
Same with Tempest. throw it away. Just
sounds terrible.
Let it go with the BTRs. I'd rather have BTRs than that.
I actually miss BTRs, but I never had to coordinate all those frequencies.
Yeah, I was going to say, something tells me you missed them because you weren't the one who actually had to make them work.
Early on, I did, but it was only like 2s and 3s, But like when you need like 30 of them, and it's like the whole stack and the leaky fiber. Like, actually, I started using Cellcom. I would rather deal with Cellcom when Cellcom was brand new, which is the precursor to FreeSpeak 0, basically. I started using that rather than leaky coax because it was just even with its downfalls, it was better than leaky coax.
Man, the programming time on BTR, that's what murdered me.
Yeah.
We'd have the whole
button.
Yeah, but with just waiting for it to scroll frequencies. I'm sitting there,
and then you scroll past.
All the techs and producers are coming back from dinner and waiting for me. Huh?
You try tapping the button to see if you can go faster than the scroll.
Oh, yeah.
But it never does.
Everybody's coming back from dinner, the dinner that I didn't have. And I'm sitting there holding buttons down, waiting. Ugh.
Hey, man, those things were tanks, though, man.
They were. I mean, they landed right in the UHFR band, though, so you had to go through that fucking menu. Excuse my language. But
man,
yeah.
Hey, Dino, I don't think we've heard your story.
Sure. I'm gonna do one about technology because I don't feel like embarrassing myself quite yet. So Dante, as we all know, a phenomenal standard that works over regular Cat5 lines. I was doing a thing for Bernie Sanders. I was fortunate enough to work with a company that did a bunch of political things, and I had a wireless router set up with my system, and it was doing two jobs. It was giving me control of my surface, and it was also taking care of I guess it was just giving me control of my surface, but I also had it on the Dante network for some other silly reason, and that was a bad idea. The next day, I turn the system off. I go home, or I go to the hotel, get some good rest. Come in the next day, a foot of snow had dropped on us, so everything's a little complicated. This is an outdoor event. Everyone's literally shoveling us out of this event. And I go to power up. Everything's going swell, and I can't get any of my Dante to work. So long story short, I'm sure most of you know, if you don't disable DHCP on a router connected on a Dante network, it's going to reassign all your IP addresses. Because unless you have a device taking care of your your DHCP addressing. Anyways, yeah, learned a really hard lesson. Had to sweat for like 3 hours, which was rather embarrassing, with a perfectly good rig with a bunch of bad ones and zeros. So
that's why everybody goes to static IPs, I think.
Yep.
10.10.10. Something.
Exactly. Yeah, good one. Ed, what do you got?
So, I've been trying to think about something foolish, and I just keep coming back to actually something that it wasn't me who did it. It was someone who was on one of my shows that I was the lead on, and I should have foreseen it coming.
I don't know if we want to. That's kind of gray area. I want something that you personally
I did.
put your foot in.
Come on, Ed. We can all point fingers. Come on, Ed.
No, yeah, you're right. So, following from Dino with a Dante story, because we've all been bit there. I designed this big show, and it was kind of a budget thing. So they asked me if I could make 3 breakout rooms. We're in New York City in ballrooms with air walls. They're like, we're going to turn this big ballroom into day 1. It's going to be 3 split up rooms. Then day 2, it's going to go to 1 big room and 1 smaller room. And they're going to be pulling all this stuff. Can you throw 1 Rio behind the center stage and, spider off the PA from there for each of the rooms? And I'm like, okay, we can do this. We had 3 QLs in 1 in each space. So we're doing all this Dante stuff, and it's all going great. But the lecterns were all going to have laptops on them. So the way to do it was like, all right, they've got a couple Avios. This is great. Whatever. We'll do this. But we didn't have PoE switches. So they were only powering up when we would plug them into the laptops. So every time someone unplugged them, then it would change its IP address. and because of DHCP and whatever, it kept going to the link local address of the switch, which was in a different subnet than all of the rest of the Dante. So like all my Lectern laptops just kept disappearing, and I'm like, what is going on here? And it was totally driving me nuts until I phoned a friend, and I'm like, he's like, oh, pull up controller, and I read out one of the IP addresses. He's like, oh, that's a link local address. He's like, you don't have any kind of DHCP server on there so that when those reconnect, that they'll actually be in the right subnet. I was like, I had one, and then I unplugged it. He's like, well, plug it back in. So I plugged in a wireless router that was in the back of the doghouse into the primary Dante network. Everything comes back every time, at least they would resync. It actually, in that exercise, I realized I had been running on my secondary network because my Rio had taken the link local address and wasn't talking to any of the consoles either. So it was one of those lessons learned of like, you do all these things, you get really intricate, and it like works when it's working, but then all of a sudden something goes wrong, and you don't power up the switch in the right sequence when you don't have a DHCP server on that network, and you get stuck with the switch's IPs. And
yeah, so much Dante stuff. I'm sure all of you have had the situation where a Rio just stays muted, until it finally decides that, I guess at some point it keeps trying to get the head amp information from the console, and eventually gives up, and it will not unmute even if you connect the console after that point. And it's like, okay, that's the whole refresh versus resume thing. And
do you see that a lot more on larger stacks? Because I've never done shows with more than like 2 Rio boxes, so
it doesn't matter. You fire up a Rio if you've got it on refresh, and you don't plug a console into it for a long period of time. It will eventually mute and stay muted until you.
But only the outputs mute,
right?
Which is
freaking
infuriating.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, I've had it where basically just it's inconceivable because just the outputs don't work, but the inputs work.
The D1s or D2s?
D1s.
And how long is a long time? Define.
It's a good question. I got to say it gives it a good few minutes before it gives up.
My one, and I tore apart at least 2 racks, like troubleshooting why aren't my outputs working, because my inputs were like functioning, like lights are flashing, phantoms going on, everything's patching, everything, but no sound is coming out of. And I finally figured out that the one foolproof thing is if you fire up a copy of Rio Remote on the laptop that's got Dante controller on it.
Our remote.
Yeah, our remote. Thank you. Then it's like, that's head amp info. I see head amp info now. Now I'll go, and it'll, it clears it every time. But yeah, it's it's that whole thing of like, I fired up the Rio, but the console wasn't up yet.
Yep.
And then 2 hours later, I plugged in the console, and then it just doesn't want to.
Who has had a Rio firmware mismatch?
Oh, millions of times.
Hey, Brian.
Millions of times.
Or a Midas system mismatch.
You know what I like about the Midas boxes though, is they have that mute button right on the front. So when you're patching, you can hit the mute on the outputs and do something and let go of it, without having to call the front house and can you mute this? Yeah.
Dolly Parton World Tour 2007. early version of the Pro 9 system. We've got Pro 9s at front of house and Mia Monitor World. Very early version. We had an issue with the PCB backplanes of the guys. I forget the model numbers of all the modules, but the PCB backplanes would warm up as the day went on and warp. And because they were early hardware versions, they didn't have the little sliding fasteners that let them slide around the frame to not warp as they get warmer. And by showtime, we were having channels just disappear. Boom, gone. Channel gone. Diagnostic screen, green. All the way across the board. Everything's fine. Channels are gone out of the PA. They're gone out of the monitors. And it was not only that issue, but also their network structure back then. I had installed a bulkhead Cat 5 Neutrik bulkhead to bulkhead connectors on all of our racks, and everything was linked rack to rack through those. Apparently, the system could not tolerate the impedance mismatch on Cat 5e through bulkhead connectors. And after weeks of chasing clock errors and all kinds of stuff, just bypassing those bulkhead connectors and going module to module with cables solved everything. It was maddening.
Wow.
Just maddening.
Gosh.
And eventually they solved all those problems, but that's what you get when you take out a brand new system like that.
Yeah.
And Jason,
you're the beta tester.
Yep.
Is that really funny, Jason?
Huh?
Is that really funny?
It's funny now. It wasn't funny when I was standing there with the Midas technician ripping apart modules in front of my face at showtime. And this happened in Dolly's hometown at the beginning of the tour. Yeah, it was lovely.
David, did you get a story in? I don't know. Can't remember.
I haven't said anything yet, but sure.
Well, then speak up, mister.
Wait, but I have to interrupt him only because it's Rittenhouse, and I get to interrupt Rittenhouse anytime I want. Your story cannot contain me.
I don't know. I think you might have been there. I know Robert was there. Basically, the story centers around never work with comedians. And I think Robert already knows what I'm going to say. We were doing a show, and famous comedian, Saturday Night Live, loves to play guitar, had this wireless guitar rig as a show that was in the round. And then we also had another band playing on the other end. This was a Leukemia Ball back in the late 90s. Yeah, you remember this. So he's up there, does his little comedy routine, picks up his acoustic, which is plugged into a wireless, and strum, then nothing. The wireless just drops dead. And I don't even know why or what, but literally on comm, Robert goes, I'm backstage behind the other band at monitors. And he says, grab a wireless, run it out there right now. So I have to then go through the entire crowd with a wireless mic on a stand with the comedian then making fun of me on stage before I get there. There's a bunch of stagehands backstage right now going, dude, man, you got to go out there and fix that. No, man, not me. You. No, you, man. No. So here I am walking this mic all the way out to a center stage in the round with the entire audience then going, oh, you're the dude. Oh, yeah, thanks. I'm the dude. Put it there. He plays this thing. I get back. The entire local 22 stagehands are just laughing and still to this day go, hey, remember when that guy was making fun of you? Yeah. It was a great one.
About this till you told it, but yes, I do remember. Never get in the view of the comedian.
Never.
At least they could have fun with it, instead of tearing you a new one. It's beautiful. It reminds me what you're talking about. It reminded me of that video you guys have probably seen where Rush is up on stage and Getty or Alex's microphone's not working, and they just make a song out of it. They just go, I wish my song or my guitar. That's it. Alex's guitar is not working, so they just start singing, "Hey, I like to play my guitar," and he's just making a whole really funny thing about it as the guitar tech comes up and changes the guitar, and they, yay, and everybody cheers, and the audience is like, "That's cool," instead of having a tantrum or something like that.
And that's a true performer.
Best band ever.
I'm a huge Rush fan, but isn't it funny that the Canadian has to bring up the Rush story?
Yeah. Yeah, I picked up on that too.
Wouldn't you?
I'm a fan. Did we miss
Yeah,
anybody?
we got to give that to them, man. We got to give it to them. They've earned it.
And Neil Young. Give them Neil Young too while we're at it.
Yeah. We'll give them Neil Young.
They're naked ladies. I see they're coming back.
No.
Red
You
Rocks.
don't get them. You don't get them.
He's balanced out by the Celine Dion factor, and Justin Bieber. So
yeah, Bieber really knocked it down several notches.
Guys, trump card, Gordon Lightfoot. End of story.
Yeah. Oh, and Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's been a few.
So when did this turn into like Canada appreciation show? Because I didn't realize we
Well,
were
I am
moving in that
kinda-
direction at all.
Kind of
We
like the
love
new
Canada.
co-host. You know?
We all want to live there now.
You brought it on yourself.
And,
I knew my
interestingly,
laptop
Ike is-
smelled like burnt maple syrup.
and Ike's not even here to help me.
Half of my Pro Tools class is Canadian.
Hey,
It's springtime now, you know. In the wintertime, not so much.
Mhm.
But now that summer's coming, Canada's looking really good to we Americans. Really good.
I
Yeah,
could
you
go
guys
for
got
some
more
poutine.
vaccines than we do, though.
Even wintertime in Banff, man. It's beautiful there.
I was going to
Just
say
down the
skiing.
Vancouver too.
Yeah, skiing in Whistler, amazing.
So basically,
Well, I
year
love
round in
it. I
Canada.
love the love. Thank you,
Looking
guys.
pretty good.
So we still have a little bit of time. Maybe Brian has a story, another story.
I actually am the only one who hasn't directly shared a story. I've been
Oh, I
too
thought you
busy
did.
interrupting
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah.
I
don't
think I
really
may
pay
have
much
just said
attention
I
to
did
you.
that. I think now I got.
He was implicated in stories.
I was implicated in stories, and there was also just a lot of people telling the stories. I'm like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I also have done that. Yes, I also have done that. My two favorite idiot stories, because I've got a lot of stories that I can kind of explain away as, but there was some sun, or there was like, you know, but there's two that like are just it burned into my memory because there was literally like zero excuse. The first one, classic corporate gig, you know, long general session, talk, video, talk, video, talk, video. Everything is, and I should preface this with going back to, this was back when we were using beta decks. So basically it was imperative that you mute video when you weren't in playback because you would hear the scroll sound. So it was always very important to make sure, that was like a big part of corporate, was make sure video's off. You know, you would tell them they were clear on comms, all this stuff. But we're cooking along, everything's fine. We go into a long video roll. It's like a long roll. It's like a 15-minute roll or something. And I'm just kind of chilling out, you know, my mind's wandering, like comms are silent, nothing's happening, just the video's rolling, life is good. And I glance up at my console and I notice that my video channels are on. And I'm like, oh, I need to clear those in case, you know, they cue video. And sure enough, I like muted the video. It's the only thing on. And I'm just like, boop. And I mean, thankfully it's that reflexive action of you pushed a button and a bad thing happened. So I immediately pushed it again. It's like, oops. And it was only out for like a second, but it's just one of those, like, there's no explanation other than just like my mind just wandered off into space.
Those are my nightmares,
just like mute
Brian.
group 8. Mute group 8. You push it, bad. Push it again.
Wait, push it again. Oh, that's better. The other one is just classic because the PM4K had the solo in place button with the cap over it, like you were launching a nuclear missile. All the old guys remember this.
With good reason.
With good reason. Very good reason. Kennedy Center, 4,000 people, all who probably paid $1,000 a ticket to see an act. I can't remember who it was, but I'm sure they were famous. And they got treated to a bass solo. They got treated to a guitar solo. There were several other little isolated solos in the middle of the show with me and my cans. Finally, somebody walks up to me and is like, every once in a while, the band goes away and we just like hear one thing. You know, meanwhile, this red light in the middle of the console
flashing away at you.
Flashing away like it couldn't be more obvious. It's got a thing on it. Don't push. Don't. Nope. Just.
I had a boss way back in the day when I was working for a tiny little regional sound company in Detroit. And I did that. I used to put my cans on all the time. I'd be playing with the console. I got the cans on, the PA's blasting. And he would, I mean, it's got to be in my imagination, but I seem to remember him slapping the cans off of me, saying, "Take those things off."
It wasn't Larry, was it?
Larry Palmer?
Yeah.
Oh my God. My first sound gig in my career, 1987 or 88, I worked for Larry Palmer for a couple of years, and I love Larry.
Such a sweetheart. But
Oh
I
my
could see
God.
him doing that too.
Oh my God. This is crazy.
The world is small. The world that
Well,
we
thank you,
are
Brian.
small.
Take those off. That's not what you're mixing for.
Well, and I mean, it was, you know, like all of the, you know, kind of the big takeaway for this whole like hour for me is just, and we all learned something at every single one of those that like stuck in our memories. I am extremely cautious now. I basically never put headphones on and cue something up in the middle of a show. Like I just don't do it. Unless it's just absolutely crucial. And then I'm like, okay, there might be a buzz. I can't quite make it out. Am I positive that this is the right button?
Mm-hmm.
One ear off, PA's still there. Okay. Like I'm just completely paranoid that I'm going to do, you know, something stupid again.
Well, I started a long time ago to stop using mutes and just pull faders down. And it's so obvious. And the best part about that is if you're missing it, you fade it in and nobody notices. And it's a lot better than boom, in comes the thing that you, I forgot to hit the button, you know. Same with DCAs and things, just pull them down and put them back up to zero. You know, I tend to run lots of stuff at zero just probably for that reason. And nowadays it doesn't really matter in the digital world, but you know, get away from that mute thing because it's nothing worse than that kabam when it comes on, right? And you physically can see a fader down a lot faster and easier than you can a mute turn on off.
Well, I started doing the same thing.
Handle for everything.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Good. Also a good point. But no, I started doing the exact same thing back in the early days of RCI because we had a Soundcraft where red meant off and we had a Yamaha where, you know, lit meant on.
Except for the 5D where it's both.
Right. You know, I'm not smart enough to like, I literally just, I got ooged out by mutes. I just, as much as possible, I do not use them. I'd rather push up 10 faders at one time than push a mute that turns everything on suddenly and have it come on the wrong way.
Well, and there's nothing worse than, especially in corporates, when you're having to do a record and then you mute everything, it's dead, and then somebody you see somebody walk on stage even though their mic isn't on, but you don't hear anything. There's no ambience, there's nothing. So it just fade it in, fade it out instead of boom, now it's on, and yeah, it's no.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, you can always cover up a fade. It's like, well, you know, it
can
was
I-
a little
can I
low
give
at
you
the
guys a
start.
20-second tip?
And oddly, in
Real
my current career, I have moved from faders to using mutes.
That's how good you are. You have no problem with that.
That's the nice thing about your whole world existing through Zoom.
Now, Brian, there's a mistake that I still continue to make every once in a while, and that's when changing patch, not taking from channel, taking from port, and then losing all my head amps and being like, I do this more frequently than I'd like to admit.
On.
Yeah. Well, I think we're actually getting near the end of the show there, Brian. I think we actually survived.
I think I'd like a round of applause for Andy Broughton's first hosting.
What did I do?
First of many
I
more.
talked.
Well, yeah.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all for coming, making me feel so welcome way up here in cold Canada.
And I think with that, gents, I'm going to try to roll that fabulous bean footage and take us out of here. So I believe if I do that, nope, I screwed it up again.
I didn't see it. I
Sure
heard
is,
it, but
yeah,
didn't see it.
is good that we've got like professionals in charge of, you know, show things because.
Yeah, but you gotta love the bushes bean dog. Nice reference.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work?
It'll take a miracle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.